All right, well, thank you everybody for coming. My name's Dania. I'm an LA2 here at Carnegie. This is the continuation of my cooking program. This is Cooking 103 Sushi. There was a Cooking 101 about making the French mother sauces, and there was a Cooking 102 about holiday side dishes. So if you didn't catch those, you're going to be completely lost. You might as well leave. They're all kind of their own thing, even though it's kind of done as a series. A little bit about me. I was trained in sushi by a man named Ezra. Now he's a farmer in the Hillsdale area, but for many years he was a sous chef for Masaharu Morimoto, who was Iron Chef Japan for a while on the original Iron Chef show. He's a big personality on the Food Network and stuff. Don't let that make you think that I'm like some big shot sushi chef. I just happen to be very lucky to work with such an amazing person. So I worked for about 3 years. That's where this experience comes from. Sushi originates in Southeast Asia. There isn't exactly a clear time when it would have started, and it would have taken a lot of different forms in different parts of the region. The type of sushi that's close to what we think of today when we think about sushi was credited to Hanaya Yohei, who was supposed to have invented nigiri sushi in the middle 1800s in the Edo period of Japan. The ones that we're going to be talking about today are kind of branched from those. We're going to be talking about furumaki rolls and uramaki rolls. Furumaki is like the seaweed is on the outside, rice and stuff is on the inside, and uramaki is the rice is on the outside. That's, as Americans, maybe what we're a little bit more familiar with a lot of the time. We're going to talk about the foundation of sushi, which is rice. The word sushi actually translates roughly to sour tasting, and the term specifically is referring to the rice because you use especially seasoned vinegared rice for sushi. Traditionally in Japan, sushi chefs, before they're ever allowed to pick up a knife and make a sushi roll, they often have to spend years and years doing nothing but preparing the rice for the sushi chefs. It's considered a very big honor to be a sushi chef, and since rice is the foundation, most important ingredient in sushi, it's very important for them to spend years and years. I didn't do that. That's not very common practice here in the United States. Hi everybody, editing Nia here. Because of some recording issues, because of where I stood during this presentation, this is just going to be a quick overdub of what I was talking about during this presentation. The first step to preparing your sushi rice is washing. Washing serves two main purposes for us. First, it removes excess starch in the rice, which can lead to our rice becoming gummy. Secondly, it creates small breaks in the grains, which aside from releasing that starch, will help facilitate the cooking process. The process of washing the rice is pretty simple. Add your rice to an appropriately sized mixing bowl and fill it with clean, cold water. Cover the rice completely and then some before taking small handfuls of rice and gently rubbing it between your hands in the water. Repeat this process, doing your best to move through all the rice and get as much of it as possible. As you do this, the water will become cloudy as the starch is released. Once you've done a pass, drain the water and repeat the process again. Ideally, you would want 2 bowls, one solid and one with draining holes, so that after each pass you can simply lift up the bowl and let it drain into the other. Pour that out and repeat. But it's just as easy to drain it carefully while blocking the rice with your hand, which is what I'm doing here. How many times you repeat the process will depend on the type of rice, how much rice you're making, how much water you use, and other factors. Typically, 3 or 4 rounds of washing is sufficient. You want the water to be mostly clear, but not completely so, after your final round of washing. After that, your rice is almost ready to go. Let the rice sit uncovered for 10 to 20 minutes and allow it to dry out before adding it to your rice cooker. There's a lot of great brands out of Japan and other parts of the world that sell rice specifically for sushi. You wouldn't want to use a jasmine or a basmati. You just want to use some kind of medium grain white rice will work fine. You could probably debate whether or not using a Japanese sushi rice is better or worse than using just any other normal white medium grain rice. For this we use Tamanashiki rice, which is a very well rated rice that's used a lot in Japan.
Is that locally available?
I got this online, so I'm not actually entirely sure. Once your rice is washed and rested, the next step is obviously to cook it. People debate whether a perfect ratio of rice to water for sushi is an exact 1-to-1 ratio. Some people use a 1 to 1.1, so just a little bit more water than rice. I used a 1-to-1 ratio for the rice that I cooked today. I actually have a batch that's finished up here. Very small batch. I don't need a lot of rice for what we're doing today. I have a sushi vinegar recipe that starts with rice wine vinegar. For every gallon of rice wine vinegar, I use about 3/4 of a cup of salt and sugar, 1 lemon and lime per gallon. You'll need something called kombu, which is just like dried kelp leaves. For a gallon, I used about 3 leaves, which comes out to about that much size. What that does is it's going to imbue like a really strong umami and bitterness. You want to leave that stuff in for about 3 days, and then you want to remove the kombu, because if you leave it in for too long, it will start to make the vinegar very bitter, and not in the way that, like, you know, vinegar is usually bitter. It just kind of gets this kind of unpleasant tinge to it. But the lemons and limes can stay in. I use a rice cooker. Most professionals would use a rice cooker. You can do it in a pan, although it's a little more difficult to get things just right. Once the rice cooker is switched over from cooked to warm, you want to leave the rice in for about 10 more minutes. What we're going to do is we're just going to take some of our vinegar here. We're just going to pour it over the rice. And then, let's see how this batch turned out. Okay, it's pretty good. So, you want to be kind of gentle with the rice. The idea is to just kind of fold it in on itself, let the grains separate, get that vinegar mixed in. I don't have like an exact measurement for how much vinegar you should use. Some of it comes down to just your taste. You want it to be noticeable, but obviously not like overpowering. So the best thing to do when you're preparing something like this is just go a little bit at a time, taste as you go. And that tastes perfect to me. This has been done for a few minutes, so it's cooled down a little bit already. You don't want it to completely cool down, but you also don't want it to be scalding hot. The rice I had prepared first is in this holder here to keep it from, you know, getting cold. No real exact temperature, just, you know, cool enough that you're not burning your hands, but still warm. I'm gonna go grab the ingredients. We'll talk a little bit about those before we start actually rolling our sushi. Plan to make a couple of different types of rolls today. Ingredients that I have here are crab. They use artificial crab. That's pretty common in most dishes, or most sushi dishes that you'll see, like your classic California roll. Usually you would use like the crab sticks. I unfortunately wasn't able to get those, so I've got just some chunk crab. I've got tuna, salmon, I have cucumber, asparagus, avocado, and cream cheese. There's a misconception about the idea of sushi grade fish. Sushi grade is not really a thing that means anything. There's no like official designation. Ideally, you would want to source it yourself as best as possible. When I worked in sushi restaurants, we would buy the whole salmon. That way we could see the fish before it's broken down. We can see the meat. We know that it's, you know, as fresh as it can be. A lot of it comes down to how it is handled in the shipping process. Going through a reputable distributor is your best bet rather than, say, going to the store and just buying some salmon. I think you can find some decent sushi quality fish in the area. I know Prime Cuts has a pretty good selection, and usually their salmon looks like it's pretty well maintained and very fresh. If you are using a whole fish, you want to look for things like no cloudiness in the eyes. You want the flesh to be kind of firm and a little bit springy, not soft or mushy. A lot of people believe that like that fishy smell that we associate with things like salmon and other fish is just how fish is supposed to smell. That's not really true. Really good fresh fish should not have that type of smell. It should have a very faint, like kind of oceanic smell to it, but it should not have that like strong, pungent, fishy odor. So if you are experiencing that from your fish, best practice is to not use it raw. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with using cooked ingredients in sushi. I'd say another misconception is that all sushi has to involve raw fish, but that's actually not true at all. There's plenty of vegetarian rolls, there's plenty of rolls that use cooked ingredients. Shrimp is something that isn't typically safe to eat raw. There are exceptions to that. So like you'll almost never find a raw shrimp in your sushi, and I would very much not recommend using that. I'm gonna actually rewash my hands, and once I come back, we're gonna start rolling. I'm a little bit out of practice, it's been a few years, so I might be a little slow, but we'll talk a little bit about the techniques, and then once I've kind of gone over that, anybody that wants to stay while I roll some for you guys to try is welcome to hang out. I did want to show off the cucumber technique. You'll notice that the cucumbers are in little strips. Unfortunately, my cucumber froze, my demonstration cucumber, so the texture is a little weird. I'm not going to use it for making rolls, but I can still kind of demonstrate what I did. And you don't have to do this. You can pretty much prepare these vegetables any way that you want for using in rolls. Typically, you're going to be rolling with like this size nori. You can use full sheets as well, but you know, space is limited, so you want thin to win. The way that I do that, it's so soft. You just put the knife up against the skin kind of at an angle like this, and you pretty much just go back and forth carefully. And you want to get as thin a pieces as you can, and you're just kind of rolling it in your hand.
Do you peel it instead?
Well, you actually will use the skin part. Theoretically, yeah, you could just use a peeler and use it like that, the whole thing. But so you'll just get like this thin thing, and you just do it into little strips like that. It takes a little bit of time. I used to do it a lot. I'm kind of, as I said, out of practice. This is not a very pleasant cucumber, so apologies for the food waste. As I mentioned, there's two types of rolls that we're going to talk about. One of them is the traditional style, what you'll see most commonly in Japan. It's the fudomaki roll with the rice on the inside. These are a little harder to make than the fudomaki rolls, so we'll see how this goes. Start with your nori sheet. These are half sheets. I just cut them from the full sheets, which are back there. You can do it either way. Usually you'll use a full sheet if you're doing a roll with more ingredients. There is a shiny side and a rough side. You want the shiny side to be down when you start.
Were you able to get these locally?
You can get nori at pretty much any like major store nowadays. I don't have any specific like local markets that I could recommend, but like you can get them at Walmart, Meijer, anything like that. I'm sure that there's some smaller places that use them as well. I have a little bowl of water here in case you're wondering what I'm putting on my glove. The rice is very sticky, so you always want to have some moisture. For this type of roll, you're going to use a lot less rice than we're going to use for the other one. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to roll it up. But pretty much just putting it across like that, and then ideally, you just want to kind of tickle it. Tickle the rice down. You want to make sure that you're not smashing the rice down. For this style of roll, you're just going to do it most of the way up. You want to leave about a half an inch or so at the top. Try to get as much coverage as possible. Stick it over. Can be a little messy, so just be prepared for that. Yeah. It can be a little tedious, but the more you do it, it really gets better. Like a couple of years ago, it was more of like a... I'm gonna make a California style roll here first. For this one, you just leave it the same orientation as it is with the little strip that you left at the top. Take some of your ingredients here in the center. This roll consists of cucumber, avocado, and crab. This kind of like chunk crab is great for making like a crab salad, like a spicy crab roll kind of thing. Not so great for just a straight California roll. Taste-wise, essentially the same. We get our bamboo mat. What I like to do to kind of help me, get a little bit of extra rice and just kind of in our little space. Not doing so great. Just want to put like a couple of little pieces up at the edge, not like a full like lining of it. And that's just going to kind of help it stick together once it gets to the end. And then with that on your bamboo mat, you want to just bend over and with good pressure, but not too much to squish the rice. You just want to get the pack the ingredients in a little bit. And if you did it well enough, you should be able to just roll it onto itself. And then after you take it off, put the bamboo mat over, and you want this little like kind of squared off mat. And there you go. Square is the typical way that you want to make your sushi roll. A lot of people think that round is the most common. You can do either way. I find going the square is a little easier, especially in the beginning. And then you just want to do a cut in half, and then in thirds or eighths. And there you go. And there's a California roll done Futamaki style.
I never knew to fold it in on top of itself before you folded the entire roll before, so that's totally cool.
Probably the most common thing that people do when they're getting started making sushi rolls, they just come out too loose and they end up falling apart. You want tightness. In terms of presentation, that tightness so that you don't have them come apart at all your pieces being basically the same size. Those are probably two of the biggest things to look out for if you're wanting to make it look pretty. First roll's done. Next I'm going to show how to make the uramaki style roll, which is shockingly very, very similar. Again, you want the rough side to be up. For this, you want to use a little bit more rice, about the size of a baseball, maybe a little smaller. It's kind of what you're going for. Again, just kind of off to the side, or all the way across, in the middle, and then just kind of tickle your rice down to get it covering every inch. For this one, you're pretty much going all the way to the edge. You can leave a tiny little amount at the top, but it's pretty much the whole nori sheet is covered. Probably notice that it looks a little, doesn't look super pretty as it is. Once you get to the last step and you put the pressure on it with the bamboo mat, it will become a little bit more uniform and it'll look a little nicer. You get a little bit of water on your cutting board to help keep the rice from sticking. I have some sesame seeds that I toasted up. To do that, you literally can just buy some regular sesame seeds, put them in a dry pan, cook them until they get fragrant. And then you want to flip these ones over. Other than that, the process is pretty much the same. We're going to take our ingredients. I'm going to do a couple of tuna rolls with some cream cheese.
Now is this smoked tuna or raw tuna?
This is raw tuna. The Philadelphia roll is the one that's traditionally made with salmon. Oftentimes smoked salmon is used. It can be either one. I'm sure somewhere out there there's like smoked tuna rolls. Typically though, what you might see with tuna, kind of like the same way that when you make a tuna steak, you still want it to be kind of pink in the middle. When you're using like cooked tuna for a roll, what you would probably do is actually use raw tuna that you just kind of hit with like a torch a little bit, and that gives it a little bit of cooking on the outside, a little bit of depth of flavor, but doesn't cook it all the way through. Throw some asparagus in this one. You'll notice too that I am letting like the vegetables hang out the edge a little bit. That's purely aesthetic, not a requirement at all. You also can do this rolling without using the mat. It's just often easier to use the mat. So again, getting our ingredients a little bit tighter in there, rolling it up, and then just squaring it off. And that's it, another roll. So this is how I might do it if I was doing it without a mat. Just use my hands the same way. If I had to guess, I think this one would probably be a little bit looser, but maybe a little bit, but overall feels good. Whenever you are dealing with rice, you always want to use water, so I get a little bit of water on my knife. There you go. I do also have some spicy mayo that I will use for some of these. But yeah, as far as like the techniques go, that's pretty much all it is. Sushi can be a little intimidating at first, but fundamentally it's pretty simple, and with a little bit of practice, anybody can do it.
That's exactly the word I was going to use. I was always too intimidated to try and put the rice on the outside. I had no idea it would be something that basic.
I guess now would be a good time. Does anybody have any questions?
This would be about the vinegar.
Mm-hmm.
About how long will that keep if you're making it yourself?
A while. The main thing that compromises it is the lemons and limes, but the fact that they're sitting in the vinegar means that is pretty negligible as far as the effect because of its, natural like acidity. I think you could get away with as much as like 6 months.
In the fridge.
Not even necessarily. Most sushi restaurants that I've worked with just keep it out. It doesn't need to be refrigerated. Like I said, because of the high acidity, I wouldn't want to say that indefinitely because obviously that can imply things that I might not want to imply. But no, it will last a long time. I can't really say for certain exactly how long, but months for sure.
We're gonna make some sushi, but we don't wanna make a whole gallon of it. Like, when you were working, did they ever use store-bought, or did you guys always make your own?
We always made our own. We would have 5-gallon containers that would last us about a month or two usually. You can use the stuff from the store. There's nothing necessarily wrong with it. I don't think that it has the best flavor, at least not the ones that I've tried. I'm sure that there's a good one out there somewhere, and that I think could be personal preference a little bit too. If you find a sushi vinegar out there that you like, nothing wrong with using that. You'll obviously taste it a little bit on the sushi, but if anybody does want to stick a fork in the vinegar and just eat that straight, you're welcome to.
So is the vinegar rice vinegar?
Yeah, rice wine vinegar for a base.
Now, rice vinegar is the same as rice wine vinegar, right? Okay, I looked that up.
With that, other than making the rest of my rolls, that's pretty much all I have to say. Sushi can have a pretty steep upfront cost to get into it, but once you have like most of the stuff, the biggest expense is going to be, your fish. If you are making it frequently, the margins on it are actually very, very good. In Japan, sushi is like a cheap fast food. You can get it like everywhere and it costs practically nothing. Over the last couple decades, it's gone a little bit more mainstream. I think there's a little bit of a divide somewhere about 20, 30 years ago where American perception of sushi kind of started to shift. But I think in a lot of places, it's still considered kind of a luxury. So you often will get like a California roll is going to cost you anywhere from like $8 to $12 at most places in the US. The reality is that the restaurant's cost for all the ingredients for a California roll is probably close to 97 cents. So high upfront cost, but if you're making enough of it, it's very, very, very cheap.
What's typically used in a vegetarian?
You can use pretty much any type of vegetable. Also, something called campio, which is like a seasoned gourd shaving, which sounds weird, but it looks like just like this little strip of brown, but it's got kind of a sweet flavor to it that's used a lot.
Masai? Is it Masago or something like that?
Well,
One that's almost like an egg cake?
Masago is, oh no, that's, yeah, what is that?
tamago, is it?
Tamago, yeah. Weirdly enough, never really made any tamago. It's kind of an interesting process to make it. I've never had the opportunity to do it because it's kind of a pain. I don't have anything fun to say about it. If you're interested in it, go watch a video about how they make it. The way they roll it in on itself over and over again, and it turns into just this like perfect, no browning on it, just this perfect little egg cake. It's very, very cool. If you're just vegetarian, that's an option. Masago is fish eggs.
You usually don't put cheese in a vegetarian roll.
No, not typically. Putting cream cheese in a roll at all is a very, very American thing to do. You won't see that a lot in Japan, but it's pretty popular here, and it's tasty. If a couple people want to come up and grab a couple pieces, just so they're not sitting out too much, the plan is for everybody to be able to have 3.
Did you bring any fugu?
I didn't bring any fugu. I'm not licensed to prepare fugu. In case anybody doesn't know what that is, it's puffer fish, and it has to be prepared in a very specific way, or else it's very poisonous.
I like mine like a volcano roll, which is like a fried, or maybe put panko on some of them. How would you do that? Once you make the roll, do you just dip it?
Oh, you're talking about like a tempura battered?
Yeah.
You would just make your tempura batter. Once the roll is done but not cut, pretty much just dip it in.
And then just fry it for a few seconds.
A little longer than a few seconds. I also forgot that you typically will want to give it a light battering in like the dry tempura flour first, then dip it, and then deep fried. Usually I'd say about a minute and a half maybe. You just want it to get, cooked through, nice golden brown.
Would you have a suggestion for somebody who doesn't like nori?
Yes, most places have an alternative in rice paper. It is very, very annoying to use because it's just like very flimsy and it breaks very
Clear,
easily.
right?
No, usually it's like pink.
Oh, it's pink.
Yeah, thin kind of velvety sheet of rice, and you use that instead of nori. Like I said, just be prepared because it's kind of a pain to work with. It rips easy, especially if it gets too moist. It's like a paper towel kind of like consistency. So like when you're putting the rice on there, it can be a little harder than the nori, where the nori is a little like firmer. That's probably the main alternative that I can think of. There are places that will just do nothing. Like they will just put out rice, put the stuff in, and roll it like that. I've never really done that. Seems kind of hard, but I do know that people do it.
Wasabi.
Yes, I did not buy any wasabi. I apologize. The stuff that you have at most places in the U.S. is not actually wasabi. It's like a horseradish. Actual wasabi root is very difficult and very expensive to get here. There's like some farmers in California that grow it, I know, but they're very like protective. I remember since Ezra, the person who taught me sushi, is a farmer, I remember we discussed it once, trying to see if we could source some. I'm sure they're out there, but we couldn't really find a good option for getting something for him that would have been sustainable. Wasabi that you get in the US that's like horseradish is perfectly fine. It's a little bit more pungent than traditional, like a real wasabi root is. I'm gonna just start rolling. Like I said, if anybody wants to come up and grab their pieces first, feel free. I'll just kind of put them out as I go.
Somebody's gonna be first, right?
Thank you, very nice.
My original intention was to do 3 different rolls, a Philadelphia roll, a tuna roll, and a California roll. Unfortunately, the salmon that I sourced, I'm not really crazy about. I just don't really feel comfortable serving it, so I won't be doing the Philadelphia roll.
But you can have salmon for dinner now.
Yeah, it's not bad. Like it could be cooked easily, but
That's very great.
it's just I didn't feel great about serving it raw.
How did you make the spicy mustard?
Spicy mayo.
Mayo, whatever.
This is a little different than what I would normally do for spicy mayo. I just started with a base of mayonnaise, obviously, some sriracha, a little bit of lime juice. I didn't have any, but normally what I would do is I would also get the chili garlic paste made by the same company, strain so that you don't get all the seeds and everything in it. So just mayo, sriracha, chili garlic sauce, and lime. And that's pretty much all I do for spicy mayo. I don't have a recipe for that, I just kind of do it to taste. I hope. Thank you. Yeah, I hope it's good. It's definitely weird doing sushi in a non-restaurant environment. There's a lot of moving parts to this, and I thank you for bearing with me. I was incredibly nervous. This is my biggest one of these programs yet. And I hope you enjoyed. And I hope you enjoyed the sushi.
Very nice.
That was
It's really good.
Yes, that's sweet.
The rice wine vinegar, it's a very different experience if you don't season it. And I think it's can be a little surprising just how sweet sushi rice is intended to be.
So I know this is heresy. I think I saw a recipe one time. You know how the glompi, you can make a glompi casserole?
Mhm.
Just put the cabbage in there and throw everything on. It was the same with the sushi.
Well, it's funny that you say that because when I was working at the first restaurant that I did sushi at, I was usually the one making like the specials and whatnot. And I remember one day I decided that I was going to take a cabbage, I was going to cut it into the shape of nori, boil it so that it just got a little soft and cooked. Use that as a nori sheet. I made some mashed potatoes, which I used instead of rice, and then I made some corned beef, put that in there, rolled it up like a sushi roll, topped it with Thousand Island dressing, and made like a Reuben style roll. It was quite good.
So is kelp something that you can get locally to put in the vinegar?
I would be very surprised.
So you ordered that too?
I ordered that too. Unfortunately, I had to order quite a lot of this stuff. Some of the ingredients, though, were donated by Veritas to help assist in this program, and the tuna came from Prime Cuts. I got a handful of other things at the stores, but most of the stuff that's a little less common to see I got online.
There's Asian markets in Lansing and Ann Arbor.
Those will definitely have more of that stuff. There's one I really like in Kalamazoo. I believe it's called Pacific Rim.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great store. And they have a, what is it, like a ramen
Yeah.
shop in there too?
The one in Lansing, next to Playmakers, is pretty good. The one with the big shutter.
Are the bamboo mats pretty widely available in like maybe your typical like Asian food prep like aisle, or are those kind of harder to get?
I think you can actually. It kind of goes along with what I was saying about like sushi becoming more mainstream in the last couple decades. I feel like I've seen bamboo mats just at like Walmart or maybe Meijer, maybe not
Kroger
Walmart.
usually has a good selection of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, where
So-
the other utensils are, where you buy just, measuring cup, that kind of thing, they may even be right in there.
So I think you can actually find those pretty readily. Trying to think of.
Do you have to use the saran wrap on the bamboo mat, or can you wash them?
You can wash them. It's mostly just to kind of help keep them clean.
My daughter never used saran wrap. Now I'm worried.
Well, it's just. This is what I'd say. I think of it kind of the same way as the reason why you don't typically want to like cut fish on a wooden cutting board, because it's so porous. What will usually end up happening is that even if you clean it really well, it's gonna just absorb a lot of that stuff, and so it's easier in the long term to keep them with plastic, even though they're kind of a pain to wrap.
You have rice stuck in yours? Oh.
What does it look like and where do you buy it?
What's that?
What does it look like and where do you,
Is
where
that
do you, where?
Oh.
Is it Oleg?
Yeah, I believe so. I can.
O-E-L-E-K? Yeah, it's got 6 letters, so.
Dan, you wanna pull up a picture of it real quick? It comes in like a little jar, usually plastic. It's the same company that makes sriracha.
Is that kelp powder you put in there? You said?
Nope, they're just whole leaves of dried kelp. The term for that is kombu, which is Kombu. If you're interested in like Japanese cooking at all, you might recognize the name. There's a soup stock that's very common in Japan called dashi or dashi kombu, made primarily with water, kombu, and bonito flakes. And that's kind of like the base of a lot of soups and stuff.
You can still make the rice wine vinegar mix without the kelp if you're in a bind?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could. I think there's a very particular like umami that comes from the kombu. I think you'd probably miss it a little bit if you eat a lot of sushi, but if you're not like a hardcore sushi person, then like you probably wouldn't even notice. Like I said, a lot of this stuff comes down to personal preference. Traditionally that would be a requirement for like a sushi restaurant, but if you're making this stuff at home, do what works for you. I do want to thank everybody very much for coming today to the program. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed. If you ever have any questions about any of this stuff or want any like recaps or suggestions, you can usually find me up in the reference room upstairs. I'm always happy to talk more about this stuff if you're interested. So, thank you.